afterwards, but yeah, so that way folks who couldn't make it out could still see this. Okay, great. So next question, shifting gears quite a bit here. I guess this question was just geared at how to have a good work-life balance. Do any of you have any experiences or recommendations about relationships, dating, weddings, or starting a family during medical school?
I think work-life balance is very achievable, a lot more achievable than people would have you believe when you first enter med school. But you have to be very intentional about it. So I have been, ever since the beginning of med school, this is me personally, I have been the person who fits school into its box. And then I went into med school in a long-term relationship. So that went into its box, and time with my family went into its box, and my me time went into its own separate box. And you have to be really intentional with that. And you have to set some boundaries. And, and you're going to learn this when you go through your clinicals and stuff, but like, your attendings really don't expect you to stay after for every single patient after like 5 p.m. or whatever in their clinics. They don't, and they're not going to hate you. They're not going to give you a low eval if you don't stay until 6:30 and watch them write notes over their shoulder. Like, if you need that time to go, just even take a shower or like feed yourself for the day, or have time to play with your pets or anything, FaceTime your family, go on a little dinner date, like, you should do that. And you kind of have to force it. And I got this really good piece of advice from an attending in our first year who led this like doctor mom panel. It was just like working and being a mom during med school and during residency. She was pregnant with twins while she was interviewing, and she had her twins at the beginning of her intern year. So she knows a lot about work-life balance. And what she said, which I really liked, was it's never going to be like a perfect balance every single day. It's a pendulum that's constantly swinging between these areas of your life. So some days you'll have a really good academic day, but maybe you don't get as much time with someone else, or you have a really good relationship day, but maybe you don't get as much studying done, anything like that. And you just have to kind of evaluate on a regular basis, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever, if all those like pendulums are swinging the way you want and you have an overall balance in your life, instead of striving for, concrete, like this much time every day, and you get disappointed if that doesn't happen.
So one of the professors at my school when I was a first year, I remember, said, try to maximize everything you possibly can to use other things to help you out. So for example, she's like, if you have to hire someone to clean your apartment or house like once a month, it'll save you hours and hours. Like if you're going to spend $50 doing that, it's going to save you so much time, and you can do other things. So I mean, yeah, I did use some of my student loan money to do that, but it saved me so much time in the end, because I didn't have to worry about taking out an entire day to clean when I could just use that time to like take care of myself mentally and physically. And then the other thing I realized I started to do, like when I would grocery shop, I started to do these small things where I would start to buy like pre-cut things, because it saved time with cooking. And sure, maybe it was $1 more expensive, but it saved me a lot of time. And I know it's a very small thing, but when you start doing that over kind of days and weeks, it kind of really helps you.
So I'm someone who struggled a lot with balance, if I'm being honest. I am one of those people where like when I'm studying or when I'm doing one thing, I absolutely cannot do anything else. I just sit in a little corner and study. But it did not work out. Like that's not something I advocate for. It took me a while to realize like I have to change something. And I think for me, diet and exercise was a big thing. It just changed my entire mindset, my happiness. I think that, again, what everyone said is true. You have to make that choice. And sometimes it's so hard, especially if you're thinking of going to competitive field, or you're just someone who, has been under pressure for a while. It's really hard to choose to sacrifice time to do that, and it does take time. But I'm someone who like couldn't even run a mile. Like I literally failed it when I was in elementary school. My dad will never let me forget that, the mile test. So I literally couldn't exercise at all. And I challenged myself outside of school to become a spinning instructor. So you can imagine that journey. It was like not easy, but weirdly, I think when you just have a life, and life can mean anything. For me, it ended up being exercise because, you know, that's all I really felt like I had time to do. But when you do something else outside and push yourself outside, it actually really motivates you in school and like really helps you feel like a real person. And that in itself makes it feel doable. I really, really encourage everyone, like even if you don't work out, even if you haven't, even if you don't do yoga, you think yoga is boring, you should incorporate exercise in med school. It really, really makes a difference. And diet too, keep an eye on it. Like I gained so much weight during my surgery rotation, and I'm like, it's really hard on you mentally, physically, everything. So it's important to still remember that this is life and like it's not on pause. And even though I can't really speak to the family thing, I would say that don't put dating on pause either. Like you have to live your life. This is your job. Yes, it should be something you're passionate about, but at the end of the day, like these are years of your life and you should be living them like a normal person.
And definitely force yourself to take at least, half a day off every week. Like you're going to want to, I mean, especially for the MS1s, you're going to keep want to just studying and learning. And you're like, I don't know anything. And then third year will be there and you'll be like, I still don't know anything. And here I am in fourth year and I'm still like, oh my God, I like have to study that. It's like never ending. Like you'll hear this from the residents, from the attendings. There's always going to be so much more to learn. So really like force yourself like once a week to just take time off, like at minimum, whether that be for a relationship, for family, for like exercise. I mean, hopefully more than once a week, but just really kind of objectively set that time aside.
I kind of view everything as far as like work-life balance. Like, I view it with like a lens of like kind of like a business. So like I think about the return on investment that I'm getting from studying for X amount of hours. Be like, okay, I might be able to get 2 more questions right on the exam if I sit here for an hour. Or if I chill and watch 1 episode of Netflix, like my stress level is going to be so much lower that tomorrow I could probably get like 4 questions right in the same amount of time. So like you kind of have to see like, oh, you're sacrificing one aspect of your life, but you're gaining in another one. So don't think of it as like I'm doing poorly in this area of my life and I'm not getting anything. Like, no, you're just reinvesting your energy into something else. And then as far, like, I think maybe a good strategy, I didn't actually do this, but like, I wish I did, but maybe every like month, like the first of every month, like just take like 5 minutes to reevaluate what you did in the last month and be like, okay, did I spend enough time with my family that I'd like to? Did I spend enough time studying that I'd like to? Like readjust and be afraid to change what you've been doing. You don't have to keep doing the same thing over and over again. There are times where I could study like 2 weeks without taking a break, but then there was times where I could only study for an hour. Like it's fine. You just have to listen to yourself and not be afraid to change up your strategy. As far as dating, so I'm actually dating a classmate since first year and we're couples matching. So like I can't really speak to dating so much because our dates are like study dates. Like we just study next to each other. So, but I definitely think it's manageable even if your partner isn't in medicine. You just have to, it's the same thing about like investing time into studying, like you're investing time in your relationship to make yourself happier and less stressful so you can perform better in other areas.
Great, thank you. Yeah, refreshing to hear. Do any of you guys have recommendations for how to find research opportunities given limitations of COVID?
I think the biggest thing is if you can find COVID research, that's huge right now. I think anything you are going to research, if you just add in COVID patients, there's someone researching it or someone will take the project on for you. And if not, I'd say really reach out to your med school, like professors or even your attendings that you might have worked with, because they'll know someone. That's a lot of how I got my research, was people who either gave lectures to us or through my professor or through my deans and professors. They can connect you with someone because they want you to do well, and if doing research is what's going to help you further your career, they'll find someone who will take you on.
So I think there was a lot of the virtual sessions for M4s. Like, I think people were asking that initially, like, what do we do? And I guess right now, a lot of programs are overwhelmed with applicants. So high chance if you just shoot your shot and email, they won't respond. Don't be discouraged about that. I think I agree. Reach out to people you know. Sometimes residents have things that they just don't have time to do. You can easily hop onto those. Like if you say, I'll write it or whatever, they would 100% give it to you. Something else I've seen people do, which is a little bit harder and like a little bit gunnery, is if you have an idea, you could kind of do the research or write something small up and send it to someone that way. And I've noticed that sometimes attendings or people are way more responsive or way more willing to look at it if you've like already done a lot of the bulk of the work, because half the struggle is if you email someone just for research, like they have to think of an idea or they have to figure out what you're capable of doing, and that in itself kind of deters them from responding. But if you've like done and shown that like the incentive of doing that, I've seen that work out really well for a lot of people.
I think the other thing is not just original research, but like getting involved in like writing review articles or editorials. I think those are good opportunities to kind of learn how to write and get your name out there as well, especially if you're interested in a specific specialty, then reaching out to attendings or mentors in that field and just getting some experience writing things that are not original research. I think that's also a good way to get involved. And a lot of that can just be done remotely, looking up literature, and it's a little bit different than original research.
Just kind of piggybacking off of that, if you are in a rotation right now and you have a unique case, just write a case study. I'm a big case studies kind of girl, and like you'd be surprised at how easily you can write them. I mean, every week you can probably find something really cool, and it's just one page, and you can get it published too if you want to try.
I found that doing retrospective studies and chart reviewing is like very easy, especially now with COVID. You really just need like access, and so you can just like either email like a research coordinator in like a specific department. Like for example, we have a surgery research coordinator, and she got me involved in a lot of like retrospective studies that I can just sit at home and like chart review for.
Yeah, just jumping on the same train as everyone else. I think research, honestly, I joke and say COVID was the best thing that happened for me for research. I think I just got a ton more publications out because I had a lot of time. I think research is something that you can do. I actually don't even think COVID has affected it that much, to be honest with you, unless you have like basic science lab restrictions or even you don't even be in the hospital for most research. So as long as you have access to an EMR, or you can just write up literature reviews, meta-analyses. So I think research is a huge thing where it's a lot of just self-incentive. And I think Ravina said you can essentially write up a paper yourself and send it to an attending. So I've done that a few times, and I think that's something that it's way more received than anything else I've done. Where essentially, if you write up a paper, you're like, this is something that hasn't been researched before. You basically write either an abstract or the whole paper, and you send it to the attending. They are not 100% of the time for me like, hey, this is awesome. Thanks for showing the initiative to do this, and then it gets published.
Okay, thank you guys for that. And another question, I guess, well, I'll just use this opportunity, quick plug for SAMSA as well. We have research projects going on. So if anyone really can't find opportunities at their institution or is just interested in South Asian populations, take a look at the chat and you can get involved in research that way. Now, shifting gears a little bit, sort of going back to that balance question, a specific question someone is asking is, how do you guys find a balance between studying for classes and step one?
I'm sure there's probably variability on this, but I had like pre-clerkships, and then I had 2 clerkships before I took step one. And I really I focused on the course that I was in. That was my top priority. And then step one would come in if there was overlap. So because I think it's really important to do well in your pre-clerkships and your clerkships, especially if it's like in the future, you might want to like apply for AOA or things like that. Like you need to be consistently good throughout medical school. So don't get too ahead of yourself and start studying for step one during your courses and have your courses suffer. I think that there's a way that you can blend it in. Like, for example, I always did, like if during the GI block, I would also watch all of the sketchy pharm for GI. So then it was like I was studying for clerkship or pre-clerkship, and I was also knocking out some stuff in step one. Like I made sure to watch the pathoma for the GI. So I never dedicated like a certain time that I only was studying step one stuff. It was always like studying for clerkships with step one materials, if that makes sense.
Mhm. I agree with that. Study for what you're in, pretty much always. There's not a point, especially if you're one of those schools that does the 1.5 year like shortened preclinical and then you start clerkships in like January of your second year, especially if you're like that, don't be studying for step one when your clerkship shelf exam material comes from the step two like question bank. Don't do that to yourself. There's no point. I agree with what Emily said, that I think during your pre-clerkships, if you can incorporate those step one study resources, it makes studying for the exams easier. You get better mnemonics or whatever that Pathoma and Sketchy teach you to keep the stuff in your head for exams. And then when you are studying for step one, because I think most schools do have a dedicated period of at least like 6 to 8 weeks, that's when you do your step one studying, like for real. And the only way that it helps is like once you're in that dedicated period, if you've already kind of gotten a little familiar with like, oh yeah, this is where I find the Sketchy video for Giardia or whatever, and this is where I find Pathoma for like the reproductive tract or whatever. That's pretty much, you're pretty much good if you're around that level at the beginning of your dedicated, and then dedicated is when you like, that's it.
Mhm.
I think the answer to this question really depends on like one, your curricular design at your school. So if you take step one after second year or after third year. Two, if your step one's gonna be pass fail when you take it, because a lot of people here might be M1s who it might be pass fail for. And then three, what specialty you're going into. So how much does step one actually matter for you? And so I guess I differ from the last couple answers. I actually only studied for step one. I didn't study for classes at all. We take step one after second year, and our second year curriculum was designed so it was kind of correlated to step one. So I would just study for classes like the day before, 2 days before its assessments, but I would just purely study for step one because for me, I knew that that was the one thing that was my barrier to entry into the field I wanted to go into. So I think it just depends on each individual circumstance.
I agree. I actually was a little bit similar. It kind of depends on your school's curriculum, and it's hard. I know, like starting out, to know exactly where it falls in terms of boards-based curriculum. Unfortunately, like there can be a spectrum in terms of how much boards material you end up covering in class, as unfortunate as that is. So I would maybe look at your school's step averages, honestly. If you're average or below average for step, that means you have to probably dedicate more time to studying on your own and covering the boards material. For me, 6 weeks was not enough. So it really depends on who you are or what your background is. If you have a strong anatomy, physiology background from undergrad, then you'll probably, do better. I was a history major, so I had to put in a lot of extra work there. So again, kind of see where you are and see what you need to do to get where you're trying to go.
Great. And we just had a quick question pop up. What exactly is AOA?
It's an honor society in medical schools. Just gonna, it differs by schools. Some schools have it like as an election, others it's by purely your grades. I think it all depends on your school, but generally it's just an honor society that is on your application that has prestige to it.
Some specialties care about it more so than others. Basically, it's just like there's after your third year, no. Well, there's a time for junior AOA and senior AOA, so you have like 2 opportunities to get it. And like for us, it was like the top quarter of the class gets nominated, and then they select a maximum across both years. Junior and senior is 16.6% of the class can have it maximum. So basically, yeah, it really is kind of like specialty specific. Some people don't care about it at all. Some people really value it. It's just something to keep in mind. It's kind of like GHHS, Gold Humanism Honor Society. GHHS is more of like a well-rounded, I would say, and then AOA is kind of like primarily academic achievement based.
And the equivalent for DO schools is the SSP, and that's done just in the first and second year, if there's any DO students on here.
Great, thank you for sharing that. A question for the women panelists specifically, or maybe if males have perspective to contribute as well. What are some barriers / advice regarding work in a more male-dominated specialty for anyone that's going into what they feel like would fall under that?
I guess surgery is kind of male dominated, or like has the idea of being super male dominated. It's kind of changing though. And I think our generation of like future doctors are really going to like change the stereotypes and like, but I don't know. I didn't really have too many like really machismo like men that like made it hard. I guess that's partly why I felt like I can do surgery. I don't know if this is a really good answer, but yeah, I feel like it's kind of changing. And maybe, yeah, like in our parents' generation, it would be a lot harder. Like there would be a lot more barriers, but I think there aren't as many as we think.
I'm not going into a male dominated specialty. Derm is kind of like majority women, but I will speak from experience, like in my surgical clerkships and wherever there was male dominated. I think it's really important for you to speak confidently and speak loud. Like act as if you deserve to be there, because you do. So you don't want anybody to look at you. You don't want any like older male doctor to look at you as if you don't deserve to be there. Like if you act like you deserve to be there, then they will respect you. So it's kind of unfortunate. You kind of have to actively try to earn your respect and actively like be assertive. But as long as you do that, like you will get the respect that you need to be successful, like and well respected in that field. So just speak with confidence and like trust for the fact that you deserve to be there.
There are times that, you know, they might make like, I've had male physicians make comments about like a woman's lifestyle or something. And like, it's something where you want to say something and speak up against it, but you're also like, you're my attending. I don't want to rock the boat. So you just laugh it off. So it's hard because like, we want to, you know, empower everyone and we want you to speak up for yourself. But in the back of our mind, like, especially for me, like, I was just like, I don't want to rock the boat right now. I'm going to keep quiet and laugh it off and just like show him my strengths basically. And like, it might not be the right thing to do, but it was the way that I felt comfortable handling the situation. So do what makes you feel comfortable, I guess.
So I've actually gotten a lot of pushback from nurses, specifically female nurses. I don't know why, but I've just had some experiences where they kind of just give you attitude, and don't really respect you, or kind of just like throw you to the side and neglect you. And I never really noticed that until I was in a team with other male medical students, and they gave the male medical students way more attention than they ever did to me. And obviously it bothered me. And I would just, I forgot who was mentioning this, but I think it was Emily maybe. I just started kind of speaking up more and being very confident about what I wanted to do, and how I kind of just wanted to go about doing things, especially when it came to managing the patient. And I think it was pretty clear to the nurses towards the end of that rotation, and you know, they tried not to mess around with me too much, but obviously like we try to like be nice to each other at the same time. So
I'm going to offer a slightly alternative perspective. One thing I wanted to add in before is for better, like more personalized advice on this to whoever asked this question, also definitely find female physician mentors, but find the right ones, because there are, just like the women nurses, like where, you know, like they can kind of give you an attitude or whatever. I found that a lot of like older female doctors kind of fall into two camps where it's like, I went through this, this, and this, so the people after me shouldn't have to. Or it's like, I went through this, this, and this, and I made it through, so you can handle it too. And I mean, different styles work for different people in that regard. But for me, I'm not the tough love kind of person, really. Like, I don't know. I personally still would always try to just you know, if your nature or whatever is to be more soft spoken and like just kind of like, you know, a little shyer, a little bit more like slow to like put yourself out there with people, that's okay. I found, this is just my personal experience, I found that there were times where I tried to really come out of the gate running and be like, this is who I am, this is what I want to do with patients, and it still would sometimes fall just as flat as if I was just myself. Like they say to be yourself in rotations, and if you try, you can try out both. Like you can try out just kind of like going with the flow and, you know, like being more quiet, and you can try out being more assertive and speaking up constantly. And if whichever one works better for you, go ahead and do that. But for me, like the whole speaking up and like, this is my opinion, I'm going to put it out there, personally didn't work for me. And when I was just focusing on like, let me build a little relationship with you first, let me ask each doctor like in their free time about like, oh, is that a picture of you and your husband? Like, what does your husband do? Like, just make small talk with them, get to know them. That's how I operate. That's how I like build relationships with the doctors and the residents that I'm with. So I found that that worked much better for me, and just leading into that and not focusing on this is male dominated, and so I have to act like a certain way. Like that never worked for me. Just be yourself and find good mentors. Seriously, it makes a huge difference.
Okay, thank you guys for sharing your perspectives. And we're going to be transitioning to breakout rooms so that people can ask more detailed questions. But if right before we split off, if everybody could just in one sentence give one quick thing about any advice you would have for M1s or M2s before starting clerkships. And if you could try to limit it to like one sentence max, that would be great because we're trying to switch to breakout rooms. That'd be great.
I think you talking to like seniors, like either M3s or 4s that have just recently gone through it is one of the best advice I would give.
I think no matter if you know what specialty you want to go to, just be enthusiastic in every rotation and try to make the most of it and try to feel like that's the specialty you want to go into, because the more effort you put into it, the more you'll get out of it.
And I think if you are undecided, pay attention to the residents and attendings on your rotations to see how happy they are. Because I think you'll find which specialties you vibe with more, you know, in certain specialties more so than others.
There are tons and tons of videos on YouTube about like specifically for various clerkships that I found like way too late in my 3rd year. So just try to find some of those good review videos too for like presentations or just studying.
Going off that divine intervention, I found it too late for step 2, but it's amazing. So check it out.
Don't follow attendings into the bathroom. I mean, it's never happened to me before, but I know a lot of my classmates have done that before. But just going off of that, just don't hover around too much. Sometimes you need to give them space.
I second the divine intervention. I really, really wish I knew that. And I cannot stress enough how much it helps, especially for those questions where you're like, I have no idea where this came from. But my tidbit would be network. I wish I'd known I could do that sooner, whether it's like literally going to a conference and trying to meet people or emailing people early on. I think that really helped, like would have helped me a lot more throughout med school. And it helps you find a mentor too early on, which can be really, really meaningful if you have a faculty mentor that like helps you throughout the process, regardless of field.
Yeah, I'm going to second the mentoring thing. I think that's huge. And then I guess for my tidbit, it would be essentially, if you can get into the hospital, and it's a little tough with COVID, but if you can get into the hospital early on, even before clerkships, and just shadow and try and figure out what you want to do, the earlier you know what you want to do, the easier it becomes later on to get research, get opportunities, get mentors, all of the above for matching.
Say be kind to yourself when you're first adjusting to each rotation, because each one is hard, and clinics sound easy, but it's still, every day is long and filled with patients. Hospital may sound easy that you get off at 3, but you're there at 6 or 7 in the morning. So be very kind to yourself, but still push yourself, and be your genuine self and stay engaged in each rotation, because residents will pick up on disinterest or, you know, like just bad vibes. So
Don't feel guilty for watching Netflix. Your free time is free for a reason. It's supposed to be guilty free, so enjoy it.
Perfect. I think on that amazing note, we will break out into rooms.